So the thing that caught my eye when I read this for today for the first time was the idea that everything has its place. And certainly Jesus' relationship with the Pharisees was a continuing argument about where people should be, where things should be. Everything must be ordered. Everything needs to be in its place. And this Jesus chooses not to color between the lines very often. He has a different solution for things. This contrast creates a lot of drama, I should say, in our Gospels, to be sure. It made me think about a show that I used to love to watch in the 70s called The Odd Couple. It was a play by Neil Simon converted into a TV show. It was about two bachelors, two guys who were recently divorced, friends, who decided to share an apartment together in New York City. Two very different personalities with different ways of seeing life. One was Felix Unger. Now, Felix was a surgeon by trade. He was very organized. Everything had its place, was on time, spick and span, very precise, and that was Felix. And then the other guy was Oscar Madison, who was a sports writer who usually had a stogie in his mouth, smoking and carrying on, kind of dressed slovenly, and had his head in the clouds half the time. And what would happen between these two guys, two very different personalities, they would clash to create comedic genius. And then somehow they would resolve into a better appreciation and understanding of each other. And something good came out of all that. Different values, different personalities, different ways of growing up and seeing the world that uniquely impacted how they lived. Now, this same thing goes on with Jesus and the Pharisees, to be sure. The Pharisees, my goodness, 613 laws they tried to follow. The mitzvah, it's called. They squeezed the life out of life. And here they're in constant tension with Jesus and Jesus with them. They can't even believe that he would be dining and partying with tax collectors and with women of the night. Not only would he dine with them, he enjoyed their company. I often think of that, and I'm pretty sure it was inspired. Remember the laughing Jesus picture? Have you ever seen it? I can't show it to you. Some of you may. Anyway, if you ever see a laughing Jesus, I'm pretty sure it was inspired by this story of him enjoying himself with these terrible, terrible sinners. Of course, they didn't really understand what he was getting at. I mean, if I were Jesus, the first people I'd try to seek would be the tax collectors. They had money. They had power. They had the potential to change the quality of life for people in their region, if only they would loosen things up. It would make sense. Anyway, Jesus, he looks at these Pharisees and he says, yeah, everything has its place, doesn't it? I'm going to tell you a story. There's this super wealthy guy. He had daughters, he had sons, he had lots of family, he had lots of servants, he had lots of land. The guy had power, he had money, he had everything. everything a person could possibly want, but he also had this young son who didn't particularly appreciate it. He told him, I really don't care about you. I have no interest in you. I want my share of my inheritance. What does the father do? He looks at the son. I'm not surprised. I know him. And he thinks to himself, son, you better watch what you pray for. And he gives him the inheritance. The kid takes off, he squanders the whole mess, he loses everything. He hatches a plan to get back at Dad and get back to Dad and to hopefully live under his good graces on some level again. And finally, he starts to come home. The father's on the front porch one afternoon, just kind of rocking and thinking about life. And all of a sudden, he hears some of his servants way off in the distance yelling that his son, his name's Ralph, by the way, Ralph is coming home. And all of a sudden, the father jumps out of the rocking chair. He runs, literally runs. He totally humiliates himself. He runs to get back to his son, and he just welcomes him with open arms, showers love and gifts upon him, totally brings him back into the fold, loves him beyond measure, and throws a party. The older son, who did everything by the book, couldn't believe what was happening. He couldn't believe the depths of that kind of love. He wouldn't even call it love. He'd say he's just being played. You know, you're a foolish old man. How could you possibly give in to this son? But the father transcended all that. And he said, wait a minute. Your brother was lost, but now he's found. How easy it is for us to draw these lines in the sand, to be so sure of ourselves and how we see others. How easy it is to edge God totally out of it. One of the missions I served was, I know I've mentioned this one before, Wilmington, Delaware. Reverend Tom Lehman was the executive director of it, and it was a huge, huge mission. Tom would always say to the staff, he says, here's the deal. We're dealing with broken people, homeless, without hope. This is their last chance, truth be told. And he would always say to the staff, he says, here's the deal. You remember that story of the prodigal son? I want you to be the father. I want you to welcome everybody into this place with the joy and the love and the compassion of the Father. Let them in. Love them. Look into their eyes. Ask them, how are you doing? Create hope. Jesus' story today creates hope. You know, we're all so different. Different personalities. Different upbringings. Sure, different issues in terms of our spiritual growth. We got that going too, but we're just made differently too, aren't we? Some of us might identify more with Oscar Madison. Others, maybe more, like Felix Unger. Different ways of seeing things. The hope and prayer that I have as pastor is that we recognize that each of us is different. We're never going to fully grasp where each other is coming, but what we can do is begin to listen and imagine and reflect. I said when I came here, I've known nothing but growth my whole career. I don't come to not grow. I don't understand that. And this congregation is starting to slowly grow. It will grow. It will grow because we will learn always to appreciate the other and to grow in community and recognize that these differences are not failures, but an opportunity to extend our understanding about God's grace. That the mission is so much bigger than any one of us. It's a humbling, beautiful thing. I think what I've learned over the years is when I've seen things not grow, it's usually because a certain personality type overtakes a context and doesn't allow for this. It could be either side. But you see, we've been empowered with the gift of God, with the opportunity to reflect, to create opportunities for new growth. And as we continue the Lenten journey, we can imagine God going before us and with us, not only in our lives, but in each other as well. Amen. Say a prayer for me as I walk up the stairs.